Coffee. What do you know about coffee? How much do you drink of it? Is it a drug? Is it pesticide-free? What's happening in the coffee industry? Well, this week's guest is Madeleine Longoria Garcia. She is the owner of Pacific Coffee Research in Hawaii. It's all female owned, which is fantastic. She's also a public speaker, a coffee consultant, an educator. And I've known her for a few years, so it's super exciting to finally have her on the show. She's Mexican American. I think she's, depending on what side of the family, third, fourth generation. Her family have been in both Mexico and Los Angeles since way back in the days. So I can't wait to see the photos that she talks about in our conversation. We talk about how her curiosity was actually the root and got her into this industry, which she's now a leader and a veteran in. What exactly Pacific Coffee Research is, that's based in Hawaii, that a lot of people go to and contract. And also we discuss how back in April, she was on the podcast, the Daily Coffee Pro podcast by Map It Forward, where she was talking about, quote unquote, the conversations we're not having in the coffee industry that we should be having. And so we go into how you go to these conferences. It doesn't matter. The coffee industry, Web3, music industry, whatever. So much money is being spent to give the facade that things are going okay, that things are well, but they're not. And what happens when you get disillusioned? What happens when you are able to pull the curtain back and see what's really going on? And then you see this facade and parade and pomp and, circumstance. And you're just like, well, that's not the real deal, folks. So what do? Do you stay quiet or are you vocal about it? And then we go into our questions and comments from the audience. Are coffee beans pesticide free? What about the coffee and mushroom blends? We also talk about Latinos, and I don't know, let us know if also in your communities, did they tell you that coffee would stunt your growth? Is that a real deal? Is there some truth behind that? And so much more. So yes, it's an informative conversation about coffee. I learned so much. And here I give you a Madeleine. Hola. Welcome to Word to Your Mama, the podcast that amplifies diverse voices and celebrates shared experiences. Hosted by me, Ritzy P., a Latina creative entrepreneur with a background in art, music, and new web technologies. From Academy and Emmy winners to activists, artists, and builders, we celebrate the rich diversity of my multicultural tribe. There will be special guests, mad laughs, and absolutely no BS. Word to Your Mama drops every Monday on your favorite podcast platform. Madeleine, so great to see you. How are you doing? ¿Cómo estás?
Ritzy, good to see you. I'm doing well. Mixed, I was actually, because I listened to your podcast, I was like, okay, I know the questions she's going to ask, the general ones. And I was like, how do I answer all of these, honestly, and accurately?
Right.
But yeah, I mean, from a personal standpoint, things are really well. My friendships and my relationships feel so solid and so these are my people, and it's awesome. And then you mix in the global perspective of everything and you're just kind of oh, it's overwhelming. It's really sad. It's very, overwhelming, I would say. And it's easy to get caught up in that. And I find myself trying to remind myself to return to also here and now and who I am around and the things that I have and that I'm grateful for in my life, while also always trying to, I think, maintain perspective globally. And yeah.
It's a messed up balancing act that we all have to do. And we also have to take care of ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And as my therapist said, when you have that feeling of helplessness, what in your power do you have control over? Sometimes there's nothing on those issues that are on a global scale. Sometimes there's little things
Mhm.
that we can do, but what can we do here,
Mhm.
with ourselves and our family and our immediate friends, that our family, our tribe that we
Mhm.
created and we curated.
Mhm.
And I try to do that. Meditation in the mornings helped me so much in the
Mhm.
since October. Walking, all those different
Yeah.
things. But I'm glad, we're friends. We started off meeting each other in inspired action, but we continue to be friends and
Mhm.
support systems. And I think there's a reason, because I think, we may or may not agree on everything, but for the most part, we align and
Yeah.
we're navigating this world in a certain way. So I appreciate you, Madeline, for being here. And we tried this before, kids. We tried this
Yeah.
before. It didn't work out. So we're trying it again. And here we are. So
Here we
thank you
are.
for your persistence, for your, you know what I mean?
And
For
thank you also for your like patience and like flexibility of like, well, that's not going to work this time. So let's just do it right, do it once, and then let's go. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. So, let's start off the way we start off. The next part of this is, where
Yeah.
were you born and raised, and where are your people from?
Oh, yeah. I was born and raised in Los Angeles, specifically in the Alhambra and Glendale areas. Um, and yeah, I mean, my people are from where my family is from. I am second and third generation American. Second generation on my dad's side, third generation on my mom's side. My mom's side of the family has like, it's wild, deep roots in Los Angeles. They've just been there for a long time. And some of the memories and stories that my mom has about what downtown LA used to look like,
I
or what,
bet.
like, where she grew up. And yeah, it's wild. On my dad's side, he grew up kind of central in Northern California. He's first generation Mexican American. And yeah, but my ancestors are from Mexico.
Right.
And yeah, it's an interesting, two very different places that they're from. And even being one more generation removed on my mom's side, like there is so much less information that we
Mm,
have about like who our people are or were in Mexico, you know.
right.
Um yeah.
But it's fascinating for a few of my friends that are third, fourth generation, but especially from LA. And I don't know about you, but they have these amazing photos of like a window in time and show another narrative that we're so not used to, right? Especially in mainstream
Mhm.
media, even just amongst my friends, where they they've always lived that duality of
Mhm.
being first, second gen, at a time where it was black and white photos, the fits are on point, like
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
old school LA, and it's fascinating to me. So
Mhm.
do you and your family on that side, do they have photos like that?
Oh yeah, some from my grandmother. And yeah, that the outfits, right? My grandmother and her siblings. Um Pretty awesome photos. Riots, and even like her uncles, who wore zoot suits, and like that was the thing and that was the style. And um yeah, just like really cool. And again, like just even her own memories of these places. And those are the things that I she always asked her mom to write down, and now I'm like, okay, now I need to ask my mom to write those things down too and
Yeah.
describe those places kind of in as much detail as she can,
Yeah.
because it is a part of Los Angeles history that I think so many people forget. It did not used to be this like crazy metropolis, high rise, full condensed development city that it now is. It, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and the history that I've learned because of certain clients or friends that are in these zones, say like Boyle Heights, for instance, you just think,
Mm-hmm.
oh, always been Mexican. Nope. You know what I
Mm-mm.
mean? Like all these different different migrations of different populations over time. But those photos are so precious. And I don't know if you've already started or someone in your family started a project where you're archiving those and digitizing
Mm-hmm.
those, because that would be a
Yeah.
fantastic book.
Yeah. On my mom's side, nobody has really done that. My dad's side, they have. When my grandfather passed away, all of the photos that he had in his house, because my grandfather was also, he's the oldest of 12 children.
Oh,
And he had a ton of photos, and not just from their time in the United States, but from in Mexico as well. And
mm,
there's this like one specific photo, even that I remember, I will always remember, that it's of him and my grandmother walking on the streets of Mexico City together. And back in the day, there were these people who would just like take photographs of you while you were walking around and like sell them to you
right.
and be like, hey, I just took this. Do you want to buy it, for however much it costs? And they bought this one. And it's just the two of them in these beautiful outfits, just like walking around Mexico City doing, and, whatever the errands were that they were running. Um, but yeah, when my grandfather passed away, my dad and his sisters digitized everything. And so we have digital copies of all of these photographs. Even one of like my grandfather when he was a baby with his grandfather on
Wow.
a horse on the ranch that his family have like it's still in the family, which is amazing. But yeah, it's like,
That's amazing.
yeah, yeah,
The history on
yeah,
both sides. Like, oh, that's fantastic. I can't wait to, hopefully one day maybe you share one or two of them. But
yeah,
Madeline, I wanted to get to, the question that's next. What's your
yeah.
root? What is that moment in time where you're just like, you know what? It's coffee for me.
Yeah. I oh, kind of like this evolving story that happened over many years. I started working in coffee when I was in college, and it was just a job to pay for my books and like
Right.
pay for other things, while you're a college student. And was working in a cafe, ended up managing that cafe. I was getting a degree in business and leadership, and I also minored in music, and I minored in Latin American studies. I was kind of like all over the place. And what my goal was initially was I wanted to actually work in the arts industry,
Mm,
specifically in music, specifically with nonprofit organizations in like events planning and donor relations and all of these things. And I had done like internships at music festivals and all of this stuff while I was a student. And then I'm in my like senior year of college, and I'm like, man, I really don't want to work in an office. you know, like if I could avoid that for as long as possible, that would be rad. If I
right.
could avoid working a 9 to 5 in a cubicle, that's kind of the goal. Um, and I didn't apply for a single job my senior year of college. And uh, it was so funny because in all of these classes, I went to a very small university. So in my specific program, I think there were less than 30 of us. And toward the end of the year, people are announcing like this person just got hired at this company, this person just got hired at this company, and I'm there like I haven't even applied for any of these. I knew a couple of things. One, I wanted to, like I said, I wanted to avoid that kind of like 9 to 5 cubicle office life for as long as possible. Two was I wanted to get out of the United States. And three was I wanted to improve my Spanish. And I ended up going to Spain, lived there with a family for several months. I was an au pair for them. If anybody doesn't know, an au pair is basically a live in nanny. That's also
Right.
kind of like this cultural and language exchange that's supposed to happen at the same time. And then also traveled around for a bit after that. And then I got back to the United States. I remember this. I got back to the United States, was extremely sick like the day that I landed, had probably $150 in my bank account, and was sleeping on my mom's couch. And I was like, I need a job right now. And I just was like, I still don't want to go into this office life. and I like coffee. I'm good at making coffee. And I remember telling my mom this. I was like, I'm not going to make a career out of this, so I can leave at any point.
Hmm.
So I started applying for jobs at cafes. Got hired at a cafe. That ended up leading to a different opportunity in Northern California, where I was hired to open a cafe, do everything there, hire people, build the menu, install the equipment, get everything set up and running, and was absolutely miserable because I did not like Northern California, and I was exhausted because I was working like 80-hour weeks.
Wow.
Didn't feel like I was getting paid enough for the work that I was doing. And I needed a break. And so then that led me to this random connection to somebody here in Hawaii, which is now where I live. And she owns land here, and they happen to grow coffee. And I was like, great, I want to go touch coffee and like
Mm.
actually learn more about where it's coming from. So moved to Hawaii, harvested coffee for a season, was only going to be here for like 4 months, and then decided I really like it here. So I extended my time here. Was working for a coffee company, managing their cafe. And so it was like this evolution of like one opportunity kept leading to another,
Mm.
kept leading to another. And I don't know if there was ever like a conscious decision of like, this is what I'm doing with my life, but like, I'm going to keep following the opportunities, and I'm going to keep
Mm.
following kind of like this random rabbit hole of learning. And when I reflect on these years now, because after Hawaii, I didn't just stay here. I then moved to Australia and was working
Yeah.
in coffee shops in Australia and like traveling around Australia. And then I like all of these relationships that I had been building over those years kept like leading me to other places, or people being like, hey, you're going to be there. I know this person. You should get in
Mm.
contact with them. Or like, oh, I just moved over here. If you ever want to come to Indonesia, let me know. And so I'm
Yes,
like leaving
please.
Australia, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to go to Indonesia. And, you know, this friend is like, I'm about to go on a coffee buying trip to North Sumatra. Do you want to come along for the ride? I'm like, great. So let's just like spend a week like visiting coffee farms in North Sumatra and like doing all of this other random, just all of these wild things that I kept just following, and being like, okay, this thing's coming up. Why not go do that? And then having
Right.
fun with it all too. So that's something that like, it was this curiosity about this
Mm.
thing called coffee that was leading me the whole way, and also wanting to enjoy life and not feel I think tied down in a lot of
Right.
ways. And that's what I always saw, like this 9 to 5 office job. You're going to be tied down. You're going to have 2 weeks vacation and that's it. And you're going to, have to put in requests for this stuff. And, and I lived this life that was like, all right, I'm done here. I'm quitting. I'm moving on. I saved a bunch of money. Now I'm going to go do something else.
Right.
Yeah, those same kinds of connections and relationships led me to opportunities in Central America too, to like go spend time with coffee producers there and spend like time there. I wasn't there just for a week or two. I was there for a couple months. It's wild. And I just kept coming back to Hawaii in between all of it. I kept kind of like
Mm.
finding this like pull back to Hawaii in between all of these other experiences. It was a wild journey, and I think I for some reason this year specifically, I've been like marinating on that a lot. Of like, man, what a wild life, and what
Right.
like who at like 23 years old was just like, cool, peace. I'm gonna go do this thing. I don't know anybody where I'm going. I know
Right.
absolutely nobody, but I'm gonna just go figure it out.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then you just try, and I feel like I've known you for how long? A couple of years. I didn't even know that this is how
Mm-hmm.
your whole journey
Mm-hmm.
started. And then it makes me think of course you're, certified expert, a leader in the space, because how many people that have been working in the coffee industry have had the opportunity to travel and see it firsthand on a global scale. Like it for me, it's all making sense of how you're so knowledgeable, how you're so passionate. And that leads me to, so you do all these travels, then you go back to Hawaii, keeps pulling you back. And then tell the folks more about Pacific Coffee Research.
So, Pacific Coffee Research is the company that I own with two other business partners. And, I actually came on board about a year and a half into the company's founding. When the founders were starting the company, I had a job that, because I had just gotten back to Hawaii from spending several months in Central America, and I was like, I need money. Like, I need steady cash flow. And I remember, though, these conversations happening, them trying to build this, figuring out how they were going to build it, kind of being around when things were happening, some of the meetings and all of this stuff, the conversations. And basically, I had that moment where I was like, hey, I'm done with this job. I've saved up money. I'm good. I'm I've gotten what I need to out of this, and I'm ready for the next thing. And so at that time, actually, they needed somebody to kind of step in too, to help out with a few things. And it was pretty perfect timing. So, yeah, about a year and a half into the founding of the company, I came on board. And then 6 months later, I became a co owner in the company. And now, August will turn 7 years old. And
Wow.
yeah, which is amazing and wild. And like, I was just talking to my business partner about this yesterday, and we're like, man, 7 years. Sometimes we feel like we should be in a different place. Like, things should have gone further than they have. And I always remind us that we had the fucking pandemic thrown right in the
Right.
middle of it all.
Right.
And it was like, man, we were 2.5 years old and the pandemic happened. And so,
Right.
like, even the fact that we came out of that okay and actually experienced like growth through that, it says something too.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like, the beginnings of Pacific Coffee Research. Who are we? What do we do? We are a coffee education center. We're a roastery and a consulting company. That's kind of like my short and sweet version of it. But we do a little bit of everything, and we kind of work with everybody specifically in our local coffee supply chain, but really we get to interact with folks from around the world as well.
That's crazy. I didn't know that when I met you in 2021, I believe,
Mm-hmm.
June. That's when I started. I didn't know that you guys were just a few years in. Like, I knew that
Mm-hmm.
it had started and then you jumped on board, but I didn't know that timeline. So that's crazy. And so recently you were on another podcast. I
Mm-hmm.
think it was April, and it was the Daily Coffee Pro podcast by Map It Forward. And you did like
Mm-hmm.
a 5 episode series. So I think this leads up to knowing your trajectory, how long you've been in the business, how invested and how knowledgeable you are in the business. You had the series. It was the conversations we're not having in coffee that we should be having. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember it made sense when I listened to one of the episodes, because I was seeing your stories that you were at this expo, I think it was in
Yep.
Chicago.
Yep.
You're mad. You're upset.
Yeah.
You were
Yeah.
questioning so many things. And it was funny because I had just come back or returned or was there at the same time at a conference for what I do in New York. And
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking kind of the similar thing about what I was seeing, that the money that was being spent. So could you kind of speak a little bit on where you're currently at, or what was the catalyst for those episodes and your Insta stories regarding the coffee industry?
um Yeah, so I guess to provide some more context, this is an annual expo that happens for the global coffee industry, and it travels around the United States. It's in a different city every year, and I will preface this by saying for the last year or so, I've already been feeling kind of like this identity crisis within
Mm.
my my profession, you know, of like, what am I doing? Like, what the hell are we all doing? You know, and really questioning a lot of things because of those, I think, exposures to so many different people and sectors of the industry over the years, and really having a critical eye on
Mm.
this industry. So I go to this expo, and I've been to this thing like 7 times, you know, I've gone to it many times. And I'm just like walking around and being like, what the fuck is happening? Like, I see, okay, I know what my role is here. I know what like I'm responsible for. I'm here for a very specific thing. I'm representing an organization. This is my like quote unquote job for the weekend. Um but I'm walking around the show floor. I'm like, what the hell is happening? Like, what are we promoting? How are we kind of putting on this show when the coffee industry really isn't in a very healthy place, when the economy is not in a very healthy place?
Right, right.
And like, we're putting on this show as if it's like a celebration of everything is going so wonderfully.
Gracias for listening or watching Word to Your Mama. I have a unique cross section of guests on here because I'm a purpose driven creative consultant who thrives at the intersection of creative innovation, technology, and community impact. There are a few ways we could work together, so check out ritzyperiwinkle.com to learn more.
And it's not even the show floor itself, but it's like all of the side events that are happening and the after parties. And I'm like, you know, because I have done event planning in and outside of the coffee industry, and because I had, and like knowing how much entertainment costs and food costs and all of this stuff, and I'm walking around some of these events and I'm like, this cost hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yeah,
There's no way that it costs
right,
less than that. And that much money being spent on this one party, but we can't get people to understand why they need to spend more on the coffee that they're buying from growers in Latin America or
mm-hmm.
Africa or Asia. And, you know, this is something that over the years, I think I've dove into that several times. And this time it's just like really lingering a lot for me. And it's really like, I think impacting me in a big way, where I just see this industry through a much more critical lens than I have previously. And at the
Right,
same time, I want to say this organization, SCA, the Specialty Coffee Association, pays their executives an insane amount of money.
I
And this
bet.
is a nonprofit organization. So these are public documents that people can
Right,
look up and see.
right,
And you're like, how is your ED being paid $500,000?
right.
What? How? It doesn't make sense to me. It
No,
doesn't make
no.
sense to me when I see that, and I see at the same time not just coffee growers but cafe owners, roasters fucking struggling to pay the bills, you know,
Right,
and struggling to like make their case for why they need to charge more for their product or for their service. Yeah. And yeah, I just am seeing this, like I said, through a much more critical lens, and the conversations I've continued to have since that event, since that podcast came out with a lot of people, I'm just like, man, there are some major flaws with this current setup. And for whatever reason, we, the masses in this industry, like can't get together and make a joint effort to be like, nah, I'm not going to buy into that anymore, actually.
right.
I'm not going to spend the thousands of dollars it costs for me to go to this event because it's not worth it. And also, like, I don't want to support that, but
Right.
for whatever reason we can't get together and do that. um
Right.
yeah.
No, I totally hear you. I feel like that's happening in so many different industries. It happened to me when I was in the music industry. I was like, we're not saving lives here. Like, how much money for some to stroke some egos and make
Yeah.
all this money and all these
Yeah.
different things. And then the conference that I was at is same thing, being someone that's put on events. Are you kidding
Hmm.
me? That wrapping on that pole
Yeah.
alone is a grip of money that you put all your stuff. And also it's ill attended because the economy's fucked up. So no one's coming,
Right.
no one's able to attend your crazy thousand something dollar ticket.
Hmm.
Like, it's crazy. And shouldn't these conferences be more about getting the people together, talking about the industries,
Hmm.
really talking about the realities of the industries and how you can come together as a community
Hmm.
to make things better? And at one point you said in that episode, one of the episodes that I listened to, and I was like, yeah, you're just, it's like Wizard of Oz. You're letting people think that everything's fine and dandy because you're having
Yeah.
these, it should be fine because, it's free open bar at these after parties with these musical guests and the light shows and the flowers and the da 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 da.
Hmm.
So if you're new in industry, you think, oh my God, this is the industry for me to be in long term because it's okay. It's all
Yeah.
right.
A hundred
But
percent.
it's
A
not.
hundred percent.
But
Yeah.
it's not. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean? And I feel like you going on your lives, important.
Mm.
Then you having a 5-part series on this podcast so that more people can hear it and start these discussions. I think that's a huge part of it, is the awareness. And then it's spreading this information and having these conversations with the different levels of people in the industry.
Yeah.
Because also playing devil's advocate, those EDs are getting paid $500,000 a year. They don't know, they're not on the ground. So
Yeah.
it's great to have a dialogue with people that are on the ground, that are
Hmm.
experiencing these things, know what's really happening. But
Hmm.
that's probably not going to happen. So, but I understand.
Yeah. Well, like, in the things, the conversations that I'm having too with people who have tried that are like, they're not paying attention.
They don't care.
They're not paying attention. They don't care. They're like, no,
Right.
it's fine. Everything's fine. What are you talking about? Like,
Yeah.
we're good. And yeah, I mean, I remember being new to this industry and going to this event for the first time, the second time, like the first several years, and being like, this is so much fun. Like, so much fun. And this is like, I'm seeing so many rad people, I'm meeting cool people. And by the time that you've gone to this specific event, like a couple of times, you now have community there. So it's like you're seeing people again for the first time in a year, getting to catch up with them, seeing what they're working on, what they're, what's going on in their lives. And I remember that was so rad. And that is what brought me, like, kept me in this industry. Again,
Right.
earlier, I was like, it was the relationships that I built that then led to other opportunities, right? And that was what was so captivating to me about this industry, that I could know somebody who lives on the other side of the world because I happened to meet them at this global coffee event
Right.
5 years ago. And we stay connected.
Mm-hmm.
And that leads to this opportunity or that opportunity.
Right.
And it's so cool. It's so, so cool. And the longer I spend doing that and participating in that, I'm like, but we're not fixing anything. Like, what are we actually solving? We're just enjoying each other's company, which is rad. I think that human connection is so awesome, but also we're not we're having the same issues that we've had in this industry for years, and the same people are getting the money, same people
Right.
are losing out. And my realization is like, man, I was there 10 years ago where I was like, this is so exciting and fun. And I see those same people at this event this year who are just like completely bought in and like so stoked on what's happening. And I'm like, oh, this is the cycle. Because then you get
Yeah.
to the point, maybe 10, 12, 15 years down the line where I'm at, but then the next cycle of people are back at that
Yeah,
same
so
kind of like,
cyclical. You're just like, oh,
mm-hmm,
let's play this game. Let's pretend
mm-hmm,
everything's cool and we're cool, and we'll get the new blood in, get the old blood
yeah,
out, and then it's fine. No one's the wiser, right? No, I
mm-hmm,
totally get it. So I just wanted to say thank you so much. I'm not in the coffee industry, but I could totally relate to everything you're
yeah,
talking about, because I think especially as those of us that care, that are in a system and that are learning everything about it so we could see how we could be proactive and make it even better and inclusive and da 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 da.
mm-hmm,
And then we see, oh, okay, you don't even want to know what's happening.
mm-hmm,
So how can I expect you to even try to learn? But I
mm-hmm,
appreciate the conversations. These are conversations that we have to have in all industries. Like, I need to know what's happening
yeah,
there. Do you know what I mean? Like,
mm,
I think it's
yeah,
a concerted effort. Communities, community. It impacts, especially an industry like coffee, where it impacts a lot of developing nations.
yeah, yeah.
So I think that's important. So thank you so much for
And this,
shedding
yeah.
light.
Well, and this is something that I think even a lot of people don't realize is where coffee's coming from. We think that it's just, I don't know, this brown bean, as we call it, and it's not a bean, it's a seed that's roasted. Um, but like, they don't know where it comes from. I've had people, I lived in the Northwest, people in the Northwest being like, oh, where the coffee that they sell is like down the street. That's not just from here. That's not from Washington. I'm like, no, that's being imported from all around the world. Okay, let's have a little lesson about where coffee's from and what it is. No, it will not grow in Washington. You're not going to see a coffee farm in Washington. And
Right.
yeah, it's like a huge disconnect with the consumer, with the majority of the consumers who consume coffee, and we just don't do a good job also as an industry communicating with folks outside of our own echo chamber.
Right.
And yeah, so for anybody who wants to know, coffee's a plant. It's not a bean. It's a seed that's roasted. The seed is inside of a cherry, and yeah, it's grown in the tropics, between the tropics of Cancer and Capricorn, all around the world. And yeah, it is, and something that I am making more of a concerted effort to teach people is that it is a product of colonization.
Mm,
It is a product that was taken around the world through colonization, and it was in most cases imposed on Native, Indigenous, and Black populations around the world um,
right.
as a cash crop. They were forced to work in these fields for no pay and at the benefit of the colonizer
Of
who
course.
is and was addicted to caffeine. You know,
Right.
it
Right.
is a drug. It just is an acceptable drug. You know.
Yes. A legalized stimulant.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yeah. That's the education that we all need to be aware of and know. But yeah, I appreciate everything that you do, how vocal and passionate you are, how you don't care what anyone says. You're an authority and a leader in the space. And I feel like it holds that
Thank
much
you.
weight as well, because they can't be like, well, who is she? Well, no, no, no. Check the
Thank you.
receipts, check the resume. This is what I've done. This is what I've seen. Have you been to all these places to see how it's grown firsthand? No.
Mm-hmm.
Do you provide education? And who do you go to? You come to us. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I think some of the questions that people might have are going to be answered a little bit via the questions and comments from the audience. So
Mm-hmm.
let's get into that section. The first question: are coffee beans pesticide free? How can we source pesticide free coffee? What do you think what about the coffee mushroom blends? Do they really work? Are they better for you? And this is from Mireya, and she just wants to be listed as a coffee lover or can't quit coffee lover.
Mireya. A few things there. Pesticide free, no, is the short answer.
Right.
And something that I always tell people is uh, it's not pesticide free at multiple points. It's not just on the farm, but it's like import laws and
Mm,
regulations. It is technically like a seed. So a lot of nations say you have to fumigate before that enters our country because we don't want to have any
right.
pests or diseases that might be on that agricultural product when it's brought in. Um, so even if it is organic certified, what are the actual regulations for importing that or exporting that around the world? The other thing too that I like to remind people with that is like you're not consuming like a raw product. So while yes, a lot of my produce, especially like the local produce I consume, I'm like, yeah, I don't want to buy, stuff that's been sprayed with pesticides. But we're not consuming a raw product with coffee. It is roasted at like
Right.
400 degrees Fahrenheit. A lot like there's one kind of like fungus that can actually survive that, and it's extremely rare to
Mm,
have that and find that. So yeah, yes, and it's something that I don't tell people to be super super concerned about just because of the way that coffee is processed throughout the whole chain. Coffee blends, truly I don't know very much about them at all.
okay.
I don't think I've ever tried any of them. I will say you're not getting high quality coffee in most of the, if not any of those blends.
Okay.
From personal experience, we've been approached by one of those companies to see if they can source coffee from us, and there's no way that we could ever match the pricing that they're looking for and the pricing that they're currently getting from somebody else. And I can only assume they're getting an extremely low grade product because of the price that they're paying for it. And I just straight up told them that barely covers our raw costs, like the
Mm,
for the product itself. Now you take
right.
into consideration the labor to actually create, like roast that coffee and create the product for you. Yeah, our price is going to be like twice as much as what you're currently paying. So, if that one experience is any indicator of any of those products, it's probably not high quality coffee that's going in there at all.
Right. Okay. Well, thanks
Yeah.
for that. Yeah, it's that's fascinating though, because I never knew that it was a seed, and that you're right. They have to fumigate some things for certain countries because they're like that can't
Mm-hmm.
come in here unless we do that.
Mm-hmm.
That's
Mm-hmm.
fascinating to me. Okay, the next one. Amiga Madeline, I'm so proud of you and blessed to call you one of my jefa amigas, making moves and standing in her power. Can you help debunk the following coffee myth? And can you share a couple of the most popular yet crazy coffee myths? Does coffee stunt your growth if taken as a child? I remember my abuelita telling us kids, LOL, and this is from Yvonne.
I knew it. I knew it as soon. I was like, this is Yvonne.
Yvonne Hernandez. I hope I'm saying that because she phonetically spelled it out for me how to say it, with the accent. Yvonne Hernandez, founder of Decide Balance and previous Word to Your Mama guest.
Fun. Yeah, amazing. Her personality just comes through so
When she
clearly
writes,
when she
totally.
writes. I'm like, Yvonne, this is her. Oh, does it? I actually don't know, but yes, my abuelita said the same thing to me too as a kid. But I'm also like, yeah, I'm very tiny, but my family is very short. So like genetics, I feel like that's a thing that we
Genetics or
just like.
coffee?
You're
Who's to
right.
say?
Yeah, I actually don't know the answer. I don't know. I feel like it's just something that our grandparents tell us to,
Right.
I don't know, for whatever reason, because they're Latinos and that's what they do. Um, and oh gosh, what was the second part? I can't even remember right now.
Are there any like most popular
Oh,
myths about
myths.
coffee?
I mean, I guess, yeah, people, I think the perspective of like it not being a drug, and I tell people, like, no, it's very much a drug. You are addicted to it. It's why you get a headache when you're that's withdrawals when you're not
Right.
drinking your caffeine and you get a headache. That's what that is. Um, and And I do want to say also, like, I don't think it's bad for us because I think coffee a lot in the wellness realm, like,
Mm,
gets somewhat, has like a bad reputation. I really don't think coffee is bad for us. I think the way that we, as a society, consume it
mm,
is not good for us. But in and of itself, it's actually like there's some really great information out there of how caffeine is good for our brains, it's good for our hearts, but it's the way that we're
mm.
consuming coffee, whether it's like that's the only thing that's going in your belly for the first 12 hours of the, or 12 hours, the first 6 hours of the day, that's probably not
Right,
good. Put something
right.
else in there and then have some coffee. But also, like, the way that we consume it with tons of sugar, like,
Mm,
that's not good for us.
right.
um and I'd love to see culturally a shift in better understanding this product as a plant and like where it comes from, and then treating it in a way that's more deserving and better for us. And that's something that, like, coffee is originally from Ethiopia. And if you ever look into what an Ethiopian coffee ceremony is, it is an hours long, multiple hours long
Wow.
experience. And you are sitting down, you're having conversation, and you're brewing coffee after coffee after coffee, and like, it is a whole ceremonial experience. And that got lost.
Wow.
And
It's just like
even when
chug,
we
chug, 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 chug.
yeah, yeah, exactly. In and out as fast as I can, as quickly and as like early as I can, and just get on with my day. And so, something else that I talk about sometimes, I'm like, how do we get back to this like ritual of, or
Yeah,
creating more ritual with coffee and becoming more intentional with how we consume it and how we appreciate it?
right. Decolonize the coffee, right?
Yeah.
Decolonize the way, decolonize everything, basically. But
Yes.
now we know. I had no idea. I'm going to look that up and
Mhm.
see if I can find video and put a link in the show notes because I think that would be fascinating. Do you know if they
Mhm.
still practice that in some?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Awesome. They kept the traditions. That's
Mhm.
fantastic. Okay, so let's get into the not so rapid fire questions. You know them. The slow
Yes.
as hell questions. Are you ready, Madeline? Okay. You're kind of a cheater because you know these already. I'm just playing. So I don't know if you studied. If you have your prepared answers, 3 words to describe yourself.
This one. Okay. Uh curious,
Mm,
thoughtful,
yes.
mm, intentional, or at least I try to be
Yeah.
intentional, I would
Oh,
say.
yeah. That's
Hmm.
you for sure. And the curiosity is what led you to this part of your life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like you said, like there wasn't, you're probably like the first person that I've had on here that when I asked them the root question, it wasn't like, I remember the day and the time and this is what happened. And I
Yeah.
knew that that was it. It
Yeah.
was just like, oh no, your curiosity fueled your journey and
Hmm.
led you here. I love that.
Hmm.
So, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Always assume good intentions.
Hmm.
And so this is mostly with, if you have a negative experience with someone, and I would say there's a caveat to this: if it keeps happening over and over again, don't keep assuming good intentions.
Right, right,
But on the first incident, assume good intention, and in your response, keep that in mind. Of if there's a negative experience you have with someone, provide maybe some more information than they had
mm,
before. That maybe they had and you didn't know that, and they are not coming to you with good intentions, but maybe they didn't. And now you're
right,
providing more information or responding in a way that maybe makes them think twice,
right.
because you didn't respond with like aggression or anger or whatever other negative response that could have happened.
Oh, I love that. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
because we don't know. Everyone's having their days. We don't know what's
Yeah.
behind what's
Yeah.
happening. No, I love that. Okay, so the next one, the song to get you hyped when you need it. What's your go-to?
So, okay, I have a couple.
Okay.
I feel like I have like two very different genres. One is like Lizzo, the Lizzo. everything by her, but specifically About Damn Time, I would say. Um, and the other one, and it's just like, it's the hype, but it's also like, get some freaking energy out. And maybe if you're feeling a little angsty, get that out. It's like the throwback to my high school days. It is pretty much anything by My Chemical Romance. Um,
Yes.
and probably, I was just listening to this actually. Dead is the song by them.
By them. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll
Those are
add
like,
that for
yeah.
sure. For sure. First time Lizzo, maybe? I don't know, because it's been a couple of
Mm.
years. And so maybe first time Lizzo. It may not be the first time My Chemical Romance has been added, but maybe that song. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
We'll definitely have those with all the rest of the songs on the Word to Your Mama guest hype, whatever it's called. And we'll have a link to that in the show notes. So before we leave, Madeleine,
Mm-hmm.
what is something that you want folks to know about you and or the
Mm-hmm.
industry, the takeaway, the lasting, impression?
Think, uh, gosh, there's a few things that are like kind of running through my mind. One is like starting to be more comfortable with using my voice
Mm,
and sharing more information and stories. And so I hope to be sharing a lot more in the future and in the coming years. And it's not just all about coffee. I think that I see the world through a really interesting lens because of the
yes.
experiences I've had. And a lot of those are interwoven with coffee because that is, again, like what has really led me through a lot of these experiences. I'm scared and I'm excited to share a lot more.
Oh,
And specifically with, I guess, the coffee world is, I'm in this place where it's like, where it's so frustrating, right? And so like upsetting, and like you see these systems that don't ever change, and I'm like I'm now being more outspoken in my criticism of them, and seeing that a lot of people are thinking the same exact things. And I'm at this point where it's like, do you keep putting the energy toward this and like keep bringing this up, keep having these conversations? Is it ever going to have an impact? Is it ever going to actually change anything? Or do you just stop? You know? And I don't know the answer to that yet. And I think I've been sitting with that question for like a year. Like, what do you do? Do you keep trying and keep going, or do you just stop and realize it's not worth it anymore? And I don't know. Like I said, I don't know yet, but I hope I can hold on to hope that things can
yes.
change.
Yes.
Um, yeah.
Your stories are needed. Your experience and your stories and the way you tell it are very needed. So I know it's a personal decision, but as your friend, as someone that respects you, I hope that hope stays alive and that we all have to evolve or become extinct. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel with the trajectory you've been on, the way you lived your life, as far as allowing curiosity to lead you,
Mm-hmm.
I'm super excited about whatever is on the horizon for you and your evolution, because I was like, when I heard when I watched those Insta stories, and then I was like, yeah, this is what's needed in any space, in any industry. We need those people. We need people like you that know the work and that are advocating for the industry, but even more importantly for the people and the
Mm-hmm.
environment. And I think that's super important. So I hope, you know, maybe the next time we speak, you're like, the books, the podcast, the whatever it's going to be in whatever format and all the formats, about coffee, about your life, about all these different things. I mean, because one thing that I've learned coming from so many different industries, there's a lot of things that overlap.
Mhm.
And there's a
Mhm.
lot of problems and issues that are global that I think we could take this experience, what you've learned from being in the coffee industry, this in
Mhm.
depth,
Mhm.
traveling the world. What kind of problem, what kind of solutions to what kind of problems, how were they handled, and how can that be implemented over here, or getting with this and like the I'm all about right now the bridge building, but
Mhm.
it can't happen until we share the awareness is sharing information, providing access. That's across the board. And I feel
Yeah.
like you're a leader in the space, and so I'm excited. And I want to say muchísimas gracias for making the time again to make this happen, for
Thank
sharing your
you.
story and just being super honest and candid. That's all I ever ask when we have these conversations. So muchísimas gracias, Madeline.
Gracias, Ritzy. Good to see you
And
always.
good to see you. Let the folks, before you leave, let the folks know
Mhm.
how they can stay in touch with you with all things Madeline
Yeah.
and beyond.
Yes. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, Madeleine Longoria Garcia, and on Instagram, madeline.mlg. My profile is private, but if you just like shoot me a message or something and say that it's from, Ritzy or Word to Your Mama podcast, then that's good enough for me. I don't post always like a lot of coffee stuff. It's a lot of like my personal life stuff there, but yeah, those are the places to find me. And, if you're ever in Hawaii, come look up Pacific Coffee Research, come take a class from us, do any sort of like coffee experience with us. We do some fun stuff.
And I'm excited to go back out there. I'm thinking hopefully next year. And I want to visit you because just from the videos, the grounds look amazing and gorgeous. So I can't wait. So, all right,
Yes.
Madeline. Gracias. Word to Your Mama is owned and produced by Ritzy P. Intro beat produced by Nico Beats. For partnership inquiries and contact info, check out wordtoyourmama.com. And as always, Word to Your Mama is brought to you by ritzyperiwinkle.com. And now, introducing
the Supernatural Bear Corner.
Supernatural Bear.